You're listening to the Two Sleuth Podcast, all about the business of dentistry. Hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixed full arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective. Welcome back, everyone. The Two Sleuth Podcast, live and in action. And my guest today is Dr. Jim Arnold. Why am I even interested in having him on? Well, Jim and I actually just met virtually fairly recently. When somebody comes on like gangbusters into my virtual world and I think, you know what? I need to meet this guy. And one of the biggest things that happened was an Instagram. I don't know if it was a story or a post in your feed, but as a Marriott guy who spent 47 weeks on the road last year.
Yes.
And when I saw your story about simply being generous and not overly generous or gratuitous towards others, but simply being generous. And I think you were in Chicago and it was the front desk person and just simply showing some gratitude, right? And it might have been a Jackson as well, but showing some gratitude and getting upgraded into an amazing suite with an amazing view while you were traveling. It's just those little things in life because, being kind generally doesn't cost much, or at least relatively so. And so I so appreciated that. And I had engaged with some of your socials before that. And I thought, I got to talk to this guy. I got to talk to this guy. And so we're engaging already in social media. And so Dr. Jim Arnold, let me give you a little bit of his background. He's a leader in the dental industry for over 2 decades, leveraging his experience as a clinician, multi-practice owner, and educator to empower dentists in achieving personal and professional success. Through his ventures, luxury dental retreats and foundation dental services, Jim provides transformative opportunities for dentists to elevate their practices and achieve financial independence. LDR, right? That's luxury dental retreats, combines advanced education with luxury experiences, connecting dentists with top educators to foster growth in clinical excellence, leadership, and profitability. And Foundation Dental Services' innovative partnership model ensures seamless practice transitions while prioritizing patient care and dental autonomy. So, rooted in family values, passion for empowering others, Jim inspires meaningful progress in dentistry through dynamic speaking engagements and advisory roles. And y'all know who are regular listeners, I'm pretty passionate about having dynamic speakers and not boring an audience and going through click, click, click with PowerPoint. So thank you for that, Jim, on behalf of all of this industry that we've come to know and love. Welcome to the Two Sleuth Podcast.
Hey, Greg, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love that. I love that intro too. Going to the travel thing. I don't remember who told me that, probably 20 years ago. And ever since, and I think the whole notion was the worst they can say is no. So always ask, whatever it is. And I've started implementing that in my life 20 years ago. I mean, I used to ask if I could get upgraded to first class when I checked in for flights. That one didn't work as well, but back in the day, there were several times where I got upgraded just because I asked, not because I had status. But yeah, with hotels, if you're just kind, if you're engaging and complimentary and just give them a little tip, I mean, honestly, 50, 60% of the time, I would get upgraded to a nice suite. So
yeah, love it. And I got to tell you, so there's a great movie, Steve Martin. A lot of people might not know about it. It came out, I'm 53. So, I remember this movie. I think it was in the 90s. It's called My Blue Heaven. And
I remember that.
Yes. And his famous phrase from that is, I don't believe in tipping. I believe in over tipping, right? Because he was this city slicker that got sent to this small backwoods town, and he was going to be a shyster and supposedly raise money for a little league team, and he's going to steal the money. But then he falls in love with this gal and in this small town, and he ends up actually coming back and building this ball field for them. So yeah, that's what it reminds me of. But it does. It's the little things. And you also reminded me of Wayne Gretzky and what he says, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Absolutely. So take a shot. And it's the same, though, for your luxury dental retreats, right? It's the same. It's take a swing. Like if for entrepreneurs like myself, right? I was in corporate America. I've been in dental for 18 years, and 3.5 years ago started G&A Consult. It's like if for entrepreneurs, somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, like just take your shot. Like just
Absolutely.
take your shot. And so tell me
Right.
a little bit about luxury dental retreats. And I see this the lineup of the folks. I do some work with some of those, and do business with some of those. So tell me a little bit about that. I want to learn a little bit more for our listening audience who isn't familiar with that.
Well, you gave my background, and I did a lot of education back in the day. As a student, I did thousands of hours over the years. In the early 2000s, I was doing probably 300 hours a year. It was insane. We were spending so much money just to travel all over the country, dragging our team everywhere. But we wanted to learn as much as we possibly could. Frankly, we overdid it. But then I got into education, as a mentor and faculty member and advisory board member, and helped put together conferences, a lot of really cool stuff. But I found over the years, my best experiences as an educator or student were small group dynamics. With 8 to 10 or maybe 12 at the most people, you have an opportunity to really get to know one another. You get to really deep, and people are a lot more likely to kind of share. And when education revolves around, professional and personal growth, it's really important that people be open. And it's difficult to be really open if you've got 100 people. But with 10 people, it works really well. So I combined all of those things with a passion for luxury travel. My family and I have been traveling that way for 25 years. And I think a lot of dentists really appreciate luxury, and they have a hard time like getting out of their office. They have a hard time fitting in CE. So I thought, why not make it an education vacation where they get maximum ROI due to that proximity and intimate setting?
And the number that you talk about, right? That 8 to 10, maybe 12, and combining it's a both and.
Yes.
The ability to be able to take down the shield, right? Especially in the fixed full arch lane, the all on X, the lane that I've been in and focused on for 11 years, and now with G&A Consult that we work in. Put 50 to 100 of those guys, let alone, and gals, right? Let alone more, right? Hundreds of them into a room. And it's, oh, how many arches did you do? Oh, I do 30 or 40 arches a month, right? And the number is 2, 3, 4x of what they actually do.
Yeah,
But what
exactly.
we find is that for like our accelerator clients, when we bring them together and bring them like when they're at a conference or they're at an event and we do like an intimate dinner and you get 4 or 5 or 6 to 8, right? The number that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have a dinner. And
Yes.
we really are able to say, you know what, let's leave the ego and bravado at the door and let's just talk about what's really going on. I'm really
Absolutely.
struggling because, like, yeah, we record our phone calls, but if somebody's good and we get them trained really well, 3 or 4 months later, they're asking for more money or they want more responsibility. What do I do? I had that. And this is what I found. And they
Yeah.
start opening and sharing. And it's
Yes.
like, yeah, we had a really good June and July, and then August, I don't know what happened. It just hit my August was fine, but I don't know what hit the wall in September. And they start opening up, right? And
Yes.
then they start talking about the stresses of, yeah, I've been trying to find, like, we had our lab running fine. But so exactly what you're talking about, they let down the defensive wall of, I don't want others judging me.
That's
And they
absolutely right.
open up. Is that
And
what you're finding? Please.
definitely, I mean, any kind of small group dynamic like that, people are just much more likely to open up and share. And they're not only are they more comfortable, but they see the other people also sharing. Sometimes it just takes one person to sort of kick it
One.
off. And
Mm-hmm.
when the host, me, and my speaker are both really open and vulnerable, it makes us relatable. It makes us credible, and participants can get a lot more value out of it because they're not just learning from all of the great successes that we've had, although they will. They'll also learn from the things that didn't go so well, the challenges or the mistakes or the things that they can avoid to sort of fast track success. And I mean, in my book, that's what it's all about. And you can't do that unless you're authentic and transparent. And the same as a student, in that kind of a setting, you can like get out of your comfort zone a little bit and realize, holy cow, everybody's dealing with the same stuff. Like, I am not alone on an island. There's a community, small community of people here with great proximity to guys who have been there and done that and teach that, where, they can go back feeling really empowered, feel like they're reinvigorated because they had a vacation in a luxury, villa. And it's just easier to go back and implement the things that they learned. So,
well, and here's the thing, right? The cases at conferences that you see, especially with the All on X cases, you're going to see like the beautiful cases that had like a complication.
Yeah.
And here's how I solved the complication.
Yes.
And it's usually with products of somebody who's lined their pockets with honorarium. I mean, it's just the way that it goes, right?
Yeah,
it just is like, let's just call it what it is, folks. Go ahead, blow up my socials if you want to say that's a bunch of BS, and I'll call you out on it, right? That's what the Two Sleuth podcast is all about, right? Right. But let's have an honest conversation about this. And you talk about it, about being authentic and transparent, words that we love to use. Here on the Two Sleuth podcast, we talk about being vulnerable. This vulnerability piece, which is so critically important, because anybody who's a regular listener knows, I mean, let's talk about the white coat problem, right? Let's talk about the challenge of the stresses and pressures, and they don't have an outlet and they're not talking reality about it, the pressures of the practice and of their team members and then
list.
Yeah. I mean, it's a top 5 list of suicide that we don't really want to be in the top 5 as an industry. I say we because I include myself, because I'm a contributor to it. Mm-hmm. If we're always talking about more arches and more marketing and more conversions and more and grow your team and build your practice. So this type of environment, to be able to allow them to decompress, right, and still get education at the same time. And the education might be about learning about themselves, right? Because that's the thing. What we're finding at G&A Consult, as I build out a team and allow more team members to do the teaching, coaching, and training, and allow team members to do more of the operational side of the business and working with our clients, I get to work more with the founders and the owners on the mindset, right? About how are you leading? What are the challenges you're facing? Identifying it and saying, if you do have a lot of turnover, what are you doing for yourself to help that situation?
Absolutely, because most of the time we got to look in the mirror, and see.
I talk about that. Yes.
The hard thing for dentists in all of this is, in dental school, you learn very little about business, you learn very little about leadership, and you learn very little about communication. For most of it, it's either trial and error, or we find great mentors. If we find great mentors early on, well, then again, it's all about fast tracking. I want to shorten that learning curve so that I can be successful more quickly. And I did that. I sought them out. And to your point earlier about, sometimes when you're in a small group setting, being really real and getting the actual scoop on what's up. I used to, even at a big conference, and not many people do this, but I would seek those people out, either try to take them out to dinner or for a drink. And I always used to say I learned more between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. than I did in an 8-hour lecture. And the luxury dental retreats are set up similarly. We'll have 6 hours of kind of conversational education where we can dive deep on whatever their situation is, whether we're talking about implants or cosmetic dentistry or clear aligner therapy or leadership communication or practice transitions. We can roll up our sleeves and really do that, because at the end of the day, one of the biggest problems dentists have is just feeling overwhelmed, feeling burnt out, and they just don't know what to do about it. And they've lost all semblance of life balance. And, you mentioned the suicide rate. I got to share that my first day of dental school, 33 years ago, almost now, but they said dentistry had the highest substance abuse, highest divorce, and highest suicide rates of any profession. And Greg, I was stunned It's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into and why? I couldn't understand it. Almost all the way up until I got out into practice and realized, wow, I don't necessarily have all these skill sets that I need to be successful. How can I find those? And again, it was all about mentorship and trying to be in the right room with the right people.
Well, and thank you for pointing that out as well, right? The other piece is not just the suicide rate, but the divorce and the substance abuse. And being in
Yeah.
recovery 20 years myself, I'm super diligent and mindful of that at all times. And if anybody who's listening, wants to have a conversation, please reach out. My friends Margie Schaller and Laura Nelson at Sober Life Rocks to be able to create a
Yes.
platform and
What a great group.
normalize
Yes.
sober options at these dental
Oh my
conferences. And
gosh.
I'm a founding member. Please reach out if you want to talk, converse, be a part of that movement. It's just as if, whether it's beef, chicken, or vegan options, when you go to these conferences, same, where there should be mocktails and not just, oh, you can have some sparkling water, that's your option, right? Let's
Right.
normalize having sober options at these cocktail hours, because
That's
it is, like you
fantastic.
just talked about, that evenings, like, great content during the day, but
Yeah,
the evenings when you actually get to have conversations about problem solving of what's really going on, when you can when you can let your hair down, right? To use a
that's
fun,
right.
analogy, right? That's
Absolutely.
so important. But it's something that you said too, like about the communication. Without the skill set, one of the things that we find at GNA Consult is that so often founders, owners, leaders will tend to outsource that because they don't have the skill sets. And what we do at GNA is especially in full arch, right? So we want to insource that. And what I mean by that is working with the founders, challenging those owners, challenging those clinicians to say, no, no, no,
Mm.
you can't afford to not invest in yourself, to learn these communication skills, to
That's
learn these
right.
leadership skills, because we can teach your team all you want better phone skills to convert more leads, drop the no-show rate, get more consultations. We can teach your treatment coordinator to take over the doctor-led consults so we can minimize the time that you spend with patients in order to convert all of those things for these
Yeah.
big 20, 30, $60,000 cases. But you being a leader and leading by example with those tools that are critically necessary, those soft skills, and really holding yourself up to a higher standard, which means having more work-life balance, not being in those cases and in the practice until 7, 8 o'clock at night when you're doing back-to-back arches or whatever the case may
Never,
be.
never,
Like,
never.
that's what is critically important, to invest in yourself. I
Mhm.
can't do that for you.
You
I
know,
can do it with you. Please.
that's the whole put on your own oxygen mask first before
Right.
you go help other people. And when it comes to practice, and especially being a newer dentist, if you don't have those leadership skills, you're not going to build a great team unless you have a great resource that's going to do it for you. But even then, you've got to take on that responsibility because you're the one there every freaking day and you're the one interacting with them and interacting with patients. And if you can't lead with some sort of vision and get everyone enrolled and follow you, if you can't get great people who and put them in great positions and give them all the tools they need to succeed, you're not going to be very successful. And at the end of the day, the only way to get any kind of freedom or to be able to create work-life balance, you got to be able to delegate. And if you're not a leader, guess what? You may not have the right people. They may not have the right training. You don't have the right vision, and they're going to flounder. And too many dentists then blame them instead of looking in the mirror and saying, hey, man, I need to step it up. And when I step it up, I'm going to empower my team to do the same.
Well, and I mean, it's just so true, right? That it is those pieces and that mirror back. And, in the pre show, we were talking about this, even in my company, of the delegation piece that's so critically important, right? In the beginning, it feels like, especially if you do a startup or you first take over a business, or if you're, new to it, like those pieces of, I don't have the opportunity to be like, I remember some clinicians I would go into some of their practices when I was first at dental, and I was like, no, I'm actually doing the hygiene on some of my patients. Like, this is a startup. Like, we are literally like
Yes.
bootstrapping the whole thing, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
that
There's a lot
mindset,
of ways
just
to
like
do it.
when I first started, right? It was like, it was me. And then I added an executive assistant like to help me out some. And
Yeah.
even today, just learning this week of saying, guys, got my team together and said, I'm the impetus. Like, I'm the one who's blocking. I'm the obstacle here. Like, I've been preventing the next level of growth. And even though I've been working with and helping others to see it, I'm usually the last one to see it in my own business, right?
Yeah.
That's why having a business coach and having mentors to be able to say, Greg, there's the mirror. Could you turn it the other way for a second and take a look, right? But here's the other piece, Jim, that I've learned is that building trust with someone.
That's right.
So when they say that, you can actually hear it. And I've had to develop skills to be able to say that message in 7 different ways to 7 different personality types to where they can actually receive it, because you have to build that trust in. And growing as I have to where, like, I'm from Detroit. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from Detroit that I'm a pretty direct kind of guy, right, in general. And sometimes my message isn't the one that's going to land.
Yeah.
Right. And being okay with that. Sure. Instead of me being the person who I've got to deliver the message, I'm the right person for you. Yeah. You know, not all clients are a good match with our style, with our brand, with what we do for them. And it's the same with leaders, right? It's okay to delegate to people in your organization to be able to deliver certain messages, but leading by example and modeling that behavior when you come from a healthy place is what it's all about. And that's the message to deliver. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, when you talk about delegation, there has to be that element of trust also, because that element of trust is what empowers them and gives them ownership in the business that they're helping grow. I mean, we did a lot of things, you know, because it really comes down to culture, and everybody's got to be on the same page with regard to the culture. You can't just hire someone based on their resume. I mean, I hired for at least the last 20 years on personality and work ethic. And did they fit with the rest of my team? Because if they fit with the rest of my team and they have that work ethic and that personality and the heart for service, I can teach them to do anything. And if they don't have that, well, guess what? You're not going to teach someone a personality. You know, we are the way we are. So you got to have the right people in the room. You got to put them in a position to succeed. And then you got to give them the tools to succeed. And if you don't do that, then you're never going to be free. Early on, Greg, I was a micromanager. I was a typical dentist. I was like doing everything. You know, I became a jack of all trades, master of none. And when I got my first like amazing person who was just like a self-starter, she started doing things like, whoa, it opened my eyes to what could be if I had an entire team of stars like that. And so that's what we did. You know, we built that team, and there was a lot of trust and a lot of empowerment. And they had that sense of pride and ownership in the place they worked.
And speaking from a recovering micromanager myself, I know for me, it came from a place of fear. A place of fear of the quality that would, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself, right? That comes from my background and my family of origin, right? So certain tapes that still play to this day, right? I can hit pause more quickly on those tapes. Yeah. But it's really learning about those individuals that we work with, that I work with one-to-one, learning more about them. And as you get to know them, you learn what tapes that they have. You learn what their origins are. You learn where did they learn that from, and helping them to understand that's not who you are or not who you are becoming. Right. And you don't have to play that tape again. You don't have to bring that forward. And that's really what one of the keys are. So thank you for that reminder of who I am and who I'm becoming, right? Because I think it's true for most of our listening audience as well, that have identified that, and then knowing that they can tell a different story to themselves and create a different future for themselves. So critical.
And our brains are basically hard drives. You know, we download all kinds of stuff when we're younger, and some of it's great, some of it's it's garbage. And unfortunately, that stuff follows us through life. And now with the science of neuroplasticity and rewiring your brain, it's really exciting. I mean, even at 55, to think about doing that. Some of the things that like I don't like, or I'm not looking at it in the right light, or I don't have a positive mindset about it, I can change that. And by changing those things, you become a lot more effective as a leader. And, when you talk about like the journey that any of us is on, it almost doesn't matter what profession you're in, but I'll talk about dentistry specifically because, that's all I've done for the last, 28 years. But it's, you start at a place where you're an engineer, you're doing the technical work and, that's great and everything. And then you evolve into management, where you're kind of managing things and managing teams and that sort of thing. And then if you do it right, you kind of evolve into more of a visionary leadership role. And I'm not even going to lie and say that I was intentional about all of those steps, but it's exactly the arc that my career took. And now I know what those steps are and love sharing those steps with other people so they don't have to do it by trial and error. Because, it's a big jump going from just a clinician to somebody who's managing and then taking that leap to leadership. And that's just fun.
Yeah, and it's great when somebody like yourself can lay out what the path looked like, because I know for me, it felt like I never had a manual for what my path was. And for somebody to lay it out that's been there before, a clinician like yourself that really went from engineer management to visionary entrepreneur, I think it can be super helpful. Well, Jim, this is the part of the program. All of my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. The very first thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
I think so.
I like the trepidation in your voice. That makes me know that you're the perfect one to play this.
Oh, boy.
Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh, my God. Somebody who just had rot mouth, and I could smell it from like 3 operatories away. I mean, it's crazy how quickly you learn what periodontal disease smells like and how far away you can sense it. And now, even though I'm not doing clinical dentistry, I get it everywhere. It's, you need to do something about that.
I'm up to about 10 rows in an airplane. I can smell it coming.
Yes.
I mean, like, it's just, I can't even, like, I thank you to the industry of dentistry, which has given me so much, but it's also given me that. So the good Lord giveth and he taketh away. Love it. Question number 2. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Oh, wow, my smile. So in general, I like it, but my teeth are kind of short. I have one buccal composite on number 30. I have no other dental work in my mouth other than years and years of ortho.
Wow.
But
thank you to the family. That's genetic.
Short.
Yeah.
I would like a little bit longer teeth. I'd like to open my vertical dimension just a little bit. But even I question whether or not it's worth, having a lot of overlays placed and having that sort of thing to maintain and everything when my teeth are pretty much perfect otherwise.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
I might know a dentist or two, just if you're interested.
I do too, and I've actually talked to a couple of them about that, but
I'm just saying, if you're ever interested, I might know one or two, just saying. So, yeah. And for those of you who are just listening to the audio, hop over to the podcast and jump to about the 26th, 27th minute, because when he was talking like that, if you couldn't tell, he was like into the camera, like, so if you look at my teeth, they're a little short.
I'm showing you.
So you don't have to watch the whole thing, but that's just fun. Whenever they like do the camera shot with their teeth, it's always fun just to look. So, all right, good. Question number 3.
Oh, boy. All right.
If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own, which one would you choose and why?
Oh, boy. Which one would I choose and why? Oh, boy. You know what? I'm going to say any AI-based diagnostic tool. I got familiar with one of them in my year working as an exec with a corporate group, and man, it's the present, and the future is crazy with potential and where that's going to go. It's already expanding exponentially what you can do, but on a very basic level, to improve diagnosis, to improve patient communication, to get more yeses, and to improve communication with insurance companies. So there's less like fighting about getting the coverage our patients deserve. I mean, it's unbelievable. That tool for me is like, I mean, you can't live without it, really. And you know what? 10 to 15% of things that should be diagnosed, we're missing as dentists. Like I've seen studies. And so just having that technology boosts your productivity, not just 10 to 15%, but the added communication component, because patients are very visual.
And acceptance rate. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're doing more dentistry that you've diagnosed. And guess what? You're diagnosing more dentistry. So it's a beautiful thing. And if I had a company like that, I would drive and drive and drive till it was worth $1 billion for sure.
Oh, I mean, the acceleration of application of the AI is just amazing. I'm so overwhelmed by it, and it's very exciting, right? And just like you said about case acceptance, right? I mean, showing somebody who is not from dental, a lay person, like, see how this is just this little shade of gray over here? We should probably take a look at that. Like, I mean, that's difficult.
Yeah. You can
but
show
you throw
red
boxes
on
square.
screen.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's phenomenal. I thank you for pointing that. I think that's I agree 1,000%. And the acceleration, like I said, is just fun to watch. Well, I want to respect your time and my listening audience as well. Some might be like scuba diving and their tank might be running out of oxygen before they come up to the surface by finishing listening to this.
Oh boy.
That actually would be very interesting. If anyone is listening to this while scuba diving, I don't know how exactly that would work. So please hit me on socials. Y'all hit me up in weird ways on socials for this podcast. So let's just have some fun with scuba diving for some reason at the end of this one. So in the last few minutes though, Jim, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with my listening audience today?
Well, my second passion, and this is all based upon my personal experience, what I've seen, what I've been involved with, is practice transitions. I see a lot of situations where dentists are making bad decisions, or they're getting into bad partnerships, or they didn't read the fine print. And I'm not going to beat on private equity so much, but I found that oftentimes the two aren't really in sync in terms of the vision and what they're trying to accomplish. And so I think there's going to be a big move towards doctor-owned and operated group practice situations. And I actually have one of those, which I'm super excited about, because I'm not only helping them, get more money, have more autonomy, have, maintain or even improve the culture, make sure that their team is getting the training they need, make sure that we're investing in the practice, make sure they have the exit strategy that they want. I mean, that is all about empowering dentists, make sure dentists are the ones who benefit most, and not Wall Street or not the money guys. And I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything like that. I'm just saying oftentimes the visions are not aligned, and that misalignment causes problems with your culture, causes problems with retention of team members, causes problem with retention of doctors. When morale is low, patients aren't saying yes because their antennae are up and they take it all in. So anyway, that's my other passion, Foundation Dental Services.
Yeah, love that. And thank you for sharing that. I agree. The more empowerment for dentists that we can possibly create,
Yes.
and to reduce the lack of knowledge of what they're actually doing and signing over, right? That's not everyone. That's not all of them. I don't want to put that out there, but certainly there are enough for reasoning for what you're talking about, dental alliances, because there's actually one that I participate in and working with right now in the full arch space that I think is critically important to empower dentists to make the best decision for what they've worked their entire life for. It's critically important. So they're making the best decision possible for their futures. I love that. Thank you for sharing that to close out the show. Jim, how can people get a hold of you, whether it's for the luxury dental retreats or for and forgive me, I just lost the name on the alliance that you're building. Thank you.
That's all right. Foundation Dental Services.
Thank you.
And
yes.
Just empowering dentists and making sure they're the big winners and not somebody who didn't build their business.
Yes. How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
They can text me at 219-241-4698, and we can set up a call because that's easier, or a Zoom, or they can email me. And that is Dr. Arnold, Dr. Arnold at smilesbyarnold.com.
Amazing. And we'll make sure that gets in the show notes as well, so everybody has access to that in case they're driving or scuba diving. I think we went scuba diving today for some reason. My guest today has been Dr. Jim Arnold. He is the founder of Luxury Dental Retreats and Foundation Dental Services. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. It's been educational and enjoyable having you on the Tooth Sleuth podcast.
The pleasure's mine, Greg. Thanks for inviting me.
Be sure to tune in to our next episode of the Tooth Sleuth podcast. If you need help with converting lead calls into consults, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to G&A Consult for a discovery call today.